It is Wednesday of Northwestern week. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Tickle from BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, and we are back for another hour or more of Penn State football talk as the Nittany Lions look to get out of a two-game losing streak rut that they have not been in for a number of years, and to get back to the place in the win column, at least, that the program expected to be for at the start of the season. A lot coming up on today's shows. T. Frank, is always, took a deep dive into the film, has a tremendous piece on the things that ailed the Penn State defense, both at UCLA and kind of at other points during this season. Maybe not as much at other points of the season as it was at the Rose Bowl on Saturday.
Yeah, bit of an issue this past weekend for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that. We're going to do our stock up, stock down for this two-game losing streak, which, as you can imagine, I don't know about you, T. Frank, I had a lot easier time putting together the stock down portion. I was sitting there this morning, so we're recording on the morning of October 8th, and T. Frank sent the rundown about 10 of 8, quarter of 8, something like that. And I'm going down through the list, and I'm like, stock down, oh, let me start there. That'll be easy. So I just rattled off about 10 guys, which is obviously too many. We'll filter that down later in the show. Then I got to the stock up portion, T. Frank, and I thought to myself, it's only drizzling. I can go walk the dogs right now. I don't need to think about the stock up question at this moment in time. So we did come up with some stock up guys, though. We'll get into that. But T. Frank, just give me your overall mood of this team, this fan base, this program right now as we head towards Northwestern week and a homecoming that is not going to be as warmly received, I guess you could say, at least not to start, as what we would have expected maybe at this time a month ago.
Yeah, so just it's telling that we have 6 stock up players, and you and I split one where we had I was like, you know what, I can't do it. We're just gonna do the same player for the third person. Yeah, it's a bummer. Like, it is a bummer, and I totally here's where I'm stuck. I totally understand fans' frustrations and their desire for something to change, something to happen, some action to be taken to make it feel better. But a lot of times the not doing things is, how do I phrase this? Not overreacting to problems is also part of a positive solution. Reacting, but not overreacting. And that's what James Franklin and his coaching staff, that's their plan, right? And so there is this disconnect of the coaches want to say, like, we need to double down on doing the things that are important and seriously look at the problems that are on the table and, like, what do we need to change? But it's not everything. And so fans obviously want massive change, many of them starting with the head coach. And so there is this disconnect of what feels like nothing is changing and nobody's doing anything externally and the thing that they want. But it is a bummer, just generally, to see, like, the internet and Penn State fans turn on their own team. And, like, again, I completely understand that. I've been there before as a fan of a football team myself, where it's like, this is just it's never going to get any better. We have to there has to be some drastic changes here. But it is just, as an partial viewer, it is a bummer. Like, it is a bummer to watch, and it is a little bit in our modern ecosystem. A little dangerous because people then take that platform, that thing, and then they just make that the only thing. And football should be fun, and homecoming should be fun. Hopefully we can enjoy the 90s nostalgia, right? Like, that's what they got coming back, is the 90s, early 2000s nostalgia with the Generations of Greatness uniforms. So I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just kind of a general feeling I've had this week of, this is a very different position than when we've been before, where they lost to teams that was justifiable. It's understandable you lose to Ohio State. It's not acceptable to fans, but you do have that's a really good team. We're not there now. Like, that is definitely not where we are.
No, not at all, T. Frank. And I think that's what's probably most problematic for Penn State, both the fan base and the locker room and the Lash building, is that this Penn State team has not been in this position before, where it was seen as a favorite to win the college football playoff, where it was looked at going into the season as on a level playing field with the two best teams on its schedule, Oregon and Ohio State. And obviously was listed among the favorites to not just make the playoff. That was not even a question back in August, but win the thing. And now they're off of 2 losses. They need to be perfect the rest of the way to give themselves even the slightest chance to get into the college football playoff. And few people think that's a possibility when you have to go to Iowa still, even though Iowa is about what it usually is at this point of the season. You got to go to Ohio State, which most people, myself included, had marked as a loss before the year. And then you're going to have to play Indiana, and we'll see where they're at by the time they roll into Beaver Stadium in November. We're going to talk about the Hoosiers in this week's Best Bet segment later on the show. But, yeah, it's just a fascinating point for this team, this program to be. Certainly not where anyone expected it to be. And now it's just about picking up the pieces and moving forward. We heard that from Zachy Wheatley and Drew Shelton, T. Frank, when they talked yesterday. And then also, I'm sure Drew Aller, when he talks, he's actually talking as we talk right now, 10 a.m. With reporters on Zoom. Sure, he's, doing a lot of the same talking points that those guys did. And James Franklin did. Want to know, moving forward, find a way to beat Northwestern, so on and so forth. Of course, T. Frank, what else are they going to say? But it's not really – I think the biggest problem right now, and you can tell us in the comment section, but – I just don't know if it matters what we say, what James Franklin says, what Drew Aller says. No. There is, at some point, the questions people want answered are not ever going to be answered in a satisfactory way until the team starts playing better. And then, at that point, maybe some of them won't matter. But, I can already see in the comment section here, and I'm sure you guys covered some of this yesterday, people are frustrated with the rep distribution on offense. They're frustrated by not having other options at linebacker, so on and so forth. And I guess my biggest takeaway is this, T. Frank, and I'll quit rambling. But we've learned by now that James Franklin is not going to sit at a press conference and throw his players specifically. And sometimes, it may be a little bit tougher on the coaches, but not going to throw his players under the bus. So if you want, I think what people want, I don't know if you got this sense as well, but I feel like what people want is for him to come out and say, yeah, Nick Singleton, not good enough. And we are trying to make him better and keep giving him reps. And it's not going to happen. I think people wanted to come over and run over Dom DeLuca like Dom got run over at UCLA. It's not going to happen. I mean, and so I think that is the problem.
Nobody's going to convince and this is the problem. Is I talked about this, I think, on Monday. James Franklin stopped talking about his beliefs and his viewpoint in the power of positivity and manifesting the outcome you want through belief, right? And not just like wishing it to happen, but having a positive mindset so that then you pursue that instead of having a negative mindset, which then allows you to pursue a negative outcome, not believing the outcome is going to change. So this is the coach who's going to believe in his player and believe that belief is going to manifest a change. And the coaching, and not just the belief, but the coaching, and then the attention to detail. And then all these things are going to create and foster a positive environment where the player can grow and develop and change. And so that guy's not going to come out here and say, that guy's a bum. We're not playing him anymore. It's going to be, and by the way, the other thing is, like, these press conferences especially are designed to do the opposite of anything interesting. James Franklin's intention is to get people to say less bulletin board material about his program. He's not trying to find ways to go viral or any of those things. So if you're not getting what you want, he's hoping that a lot of the negativity will go away through sheer boredom. And obviously that is not happening right now because the level of frustration and anger is much higher than the level of boredom.
And that's what I think is frustration for. I think you used the perfect word for Penn State fans right now, is that they are maybe not. Well, they're certainly not bored with where things are, because there's a lot of passionate people who are the opposite of bored when it comes to sharing their opinion of this Penn State team and where it's at right now. But I guess to put a bow on the first part of the show here, it just in what world, T. Frank, would we have been talking about non-New Year's Six bowl projections on October 8th? I'm not sure. And yeah, Tony Rojas, significant injury, obviously. But if you would have asked me in August, I think I would have told you that the only way we'd be having this conversation right now is if Drew Aller got hurt. And that's not the case. But we saw clearly how much Tony Rojas meant to this defense. And it was way more than I think any of us anticipated, at least in that particular game against UCLA, with a quarterback who could extend plays with his feet.
Yeah, and I guess the disappointing thing, to get into some of the specifics, is if Tony Rojas was your QB spy and that injury happened and what we understand of it and the timeline of it was early enough in the week, was that not enough time to find a different spy or find a creative solution in those situations?
Correct.
Because UCLA came up with a game plan in 2 days that beat Penn State. Penn State couldn't find on its roster another QB spy that was athletic enough to handle the quarterback, who they knew was a problem. Like it wasn't like his running ability was a surprise to anybody. So that is not an acceptable sort of like, oh, well, we lost the one player that could handle that particular part of the game. It's not an answer. Like that's not an answer to the situation.
Punishment. And so last night, looking for something to do before bed, and it certainly wasn't watch any more content about the Phillies. I've had enough of that. If you're an upset Penn State fan, I'm an upset Phillies fan, so we're on the same page there. But I was listening to Tim Skipper's T. Frank's Monday news conference, the UCLA interim head coach, and he was basically asked to reflect on Jerry Neuheisel, the now literally week-old offensive coordinator of the Bruins. And it was more of what we heard. Like, it was embarrassing for me to read the fact that Jerry Neuheisel literally was forgetting to press the button all in plays.
He didn't.
And he had
he didn't call some plays
ear instead of his lips before the time. Yeah. Well, it just makes you wonder, how many did Nico Amialava just draw up in the dirt, and how many of those third downs did he just say, you know what, guys, here's the deal. I can run at number 0. I'm going to run at number 0, and you just block and do not go downfield too early and don't hold anything.
Yeah.
And how many times did that happen? It just makes you wonder. And then, he was talking about the thing on this particular Monday. Tim Skipper was talking about the fact that they had a very short playbook, obviously, because there's only so much you can do in a couple of days to get ready. And you're right. UCLA was able to figure it out, obviously, with a quarterback able to make major plays, and Penn State wasn't. And can we go a little off script here? A question I've just been thinking about for literally the last 48 hours, waiting to get a chance to ask you. So we've heard a lot about, especially when it comes to freshmen, that Penn State is very, I would say, conservative when it comes to trying to balance making a year of eligibility worth it for a freshman versus playing him and enough to make the year worth it versus not.
Yeah.
Are we at a point where that needs to go out the window? Like, I'm not saying Cam Smith was going to be the solution for this Penn State spy situation at UCLA, but, and we hear, and this, as it relates to the linebackers, we hear a lot about trust, and you got to trust these guys, and we only trust the top 3 and blah, blah, blah. Like, I struggled to get, and maybe I'm making it too simple, but I just struggle to get past the idea that there was not another player, either a linebacker or somebody else, T. Frank, that could have taken the simple instruction of, here's your job. Wherever he goes, and he is Nico, wherever the quarterback goes, you go. That's it. That's your job. You're not worried about anything else. If he hands the ball off, great. Then go find ball, hit guy. But that's what I think I struggle with the most.
I'm in that position. I've been on that position for several weeks with the receivers. Kobe Howard can't be that bad at blocking, and he can't be that useless on special teams that you desperately need somebody who can catch the ball and provide a spark and can break tackles. 6'2" Kyron Hudson has given Penn State some, in that game against UCLA, was probably one of the more productive receivers. So I don't want to come down too hard on one individual player. But you've got guys out there that either look gassed or just can't get open on certain plays. And that just feels like if you can only trust 3 receivers and they're not getting the job done, to the same point you just made about the linebackers and the spying of a quarterback, what's the difference between knowing what to do and still not being able to do it, and not knowing what to do all the time, but also making plays? And so this is where, again, you have to say, the Penn State coaching staff probably has more information about some of these players than we do, that they are neither of those things. They're not making more plays, and they don't know where to be, because that's the only explanation. But as you just said, Penn State is so conservative about trusting players and allowing them to get on the field and having them not make mistakes. It is ripped the Band-Aid at time off for me on that. It has been since the Oregon game and the offensive performance. And now on the defensive side, it wasn't, because those players haven't been making mistakes. We'll get into this in a little bit. But now, yes, like I think there has to be a conversation about upside, and can players play themselves into a better style of football? And that's kind of, I think for a team that has so many seniors on the offensive side, it's just a very frustrating place to be in early October.
Well, if you want to be at Penn State Northwestern at Beaver Stadium in early October, check out Game Time. If you want to see the Lions' latest game at Beaver Stadium, homecoming weekend is here. Right now, the cheapest get-in price is $24. That includes fees. I thought it would be more like $4, but it is $24 over at gametime.co. So you won't be surprised at checkout if you do go to buy tickets, and you can use promo code ON3 at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. I was checking these Game Time ticket app out for Phillies tickets over the weekend. Love the fact that, again, they tell you up front exactly what you're going to pay. There's no surprises when you get to checkout and suddenly $150 in fees have been added. Game Time tells you all that info up front. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Do so by download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an code with promo code ON3 ON3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download the Game Time app today, and it might just be how you get in to see Penn State Northwestern homecoming this weekend at Beaver Stadium. We're going to talk more about the Wildcats in a minute. Never thought have at it.
I just, like, you were talking about the Game Time and going to the game and being homecoming, and I had this whole plan about a month ago where I wanted to, like, lower the barrier between I went to Penn State and I cover Penn State. Of, like, I am an alum of the university. I decided to live here. Like, I obviously have a tie to this place. And I wanted to wear a bunch of retro stuff on the show all week and wear Penn State, not Penn State football things, but Penn State stuff. And then after the last 2 weeks, I'm like, that feels like that's just not the right move. So it's just like, this week was, in my mind, it was going to be fun. And it's just like, this is a huge bummer. This sucks.
Yeah, it is, again, just not where you expected things to be. And we're having conversations that I don't think even the most pessimistic, either national observer who was making preseason predictions or someone within the fan base could have ever thought in their wildest dreams that we'd be talking about Penn State having the same record, 3-2, as Northwestern, and that the Wildcats would be coming to Beaver Stadium with one more Big Ten win than Penn State and one more Power 4 win than Penn State on October 11th. It just is mind-numbing to me that we are having that kind of a conversation. But let's wrap up UCLA talk with this. I'm sure you talked about it at length on the post-game show and probably also Monday or Tuesday. But with more time to dive back into the film, Penn State's 4th and 2 call. Here's my take, and then I want to hear if you agree, disagree, or otherwise. But the 4th and 2 play, number one, doomed from the start, much like the play against Oregon. And my read on it is that UCLA had a pretty good idea of what was coming, just like Oregon did. And both times the defense was in the perfect spot to counter a Penn State play call from Andy Kotelnicki that they seemingly had a pretty good idea that it was coming.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about this because you had I think the exact right read on it after the game, which is they had a cover zero blitz, as you pointed out, and they knew what was coming. So it's easier to defend a play if you've got extra players at the point of attack. And so, like, the players you're putting into those positions are not run game players, right? So Drew Aller is not a run game player. He's better at scrambling than he is at direct running. Trevor Pena, for what he is a passing game player. Secondarily, like, saying that Luke Reynolds missed the block, I feel like is also not necessarily fair to the situation, because the way that they blitzed in that situation, the defender that was free off the line of scrimmage was taking Pena, meaning the defensive end that they were going to read no matter what was the guy that went upfield. They basically crossed at that point. And so Luke Reynolds' guy then goes after Aller. That's a hold because he's outside leverage on that guy. Now, if they had it reversed and they had it so it was, linear and those guys didn't cross.
Hold on a second. There's no holding in the Big Ten.
I'm pretty sure they would even have called that one. Even the Big Ten would have called a guy standing behind a player, grabbing him from behind. That would at least somebody would throw a flag being like, I don't know what it is, seeing as we don't know what holding is, but that is something that you're not allowed to do. Right. So, like, as much as UCLA, and because James Franklin, after the game, like, I heard him say, like, we knew that play was coming and we were trying to get outside of it. And it makes sense of, like, a cover zero blitz. If you get outside of it, suddenly there's nobody out there, right? The next available defender is covering Luke Reynolds, who's in the end zone. But if you have an option, there is an option. Like, there is an option for the ball to go inside. And so there's one of two things that can happen. And again, in these situations, when Penn State has these calls, the defense dictates by forcing the ball into Aller's hands or forcing the ball where Penn State doesn't really want it to go. And that's the tactics of it. But then the spirit of it is your quarterback was completing 80% of his passes. Did you not trust the offense to throw the ball in that situation? And I wanted to ask you that. Like, do you think if it was a cover zero blitz, Aller would have found the right player? They would have had a better chance of getting that conversion. Everything's the same, but they run a pass play. Do you think like they've been able to convert that?
I do. And I have a bigger issue with 4-day-old offensive coordinator. And now, again, he was the best player on the field for UCLA. But let's not forget that Penn State shouldn't have even had the ball in that situation. Nico Amialava's third down pass on the previous drive was to a guy, I can't remember if it was the running back or who it was, but he was wide open. I mean, he wasn't going to run for 25 yards, but he would have picked up at least a first down. I mean, he fell over. The turf monster got him. So Penn State shouldn't have even been in the situation it was, quite frankly, because UCLA should have had a first down and could have ran as much clock off from there as they wanted to. Penn State got fortunate. Point being, though, UCLA trusted its quarterback in that spot. Penn State in a not similar spot, but certainly at a time when you needed the first down, to have the best chance to win, didn't trust its quarterback and went with a play that was going to either have him run up the middle or hand it off to Traver Pena. And so maybe you can say they trusted the quarterback to make the right read. They trusted the quarterback to run. To me, it doesn't matter. To me, with Andy Kotelnicki in his second year, with Drew Aller in his third year as a starter, with all the resources they spent to go get guys at the receiver position in the portal, it's just mind-blowing to me that Penn State lined up in the look that it did. UCLA called a timeout. They lined up in the exact same look coming out of the timeout, and UCLA said, thank you. We will do exactly what we're thinking of doing, and they executed it to perfection. And I just wonder, number one, look, we can talk about Katron Allen not being on the field for that series. That's fine as well. I get it. In that instance, I want Drew Aller to be able to recognize that there's a cover zero blitz coming, or at the very least that they're probably blitzing more than normal. And they're
not going to just sit and take it. Yeah.
Right. And that somebody should be open, check out of that play, and then go to whatever for first read, second read, whatever it takes. So that's the bigger issue to me. I think he would have found somebody open. Again, whether he catches the ball, whether or not someone's downfield. Like Penn State hurt itself, especially on offense with penalties. I think Nick Dawkins had 2 false starts. Like there's no guaranteeing that the pass play would have worked. But I have seen Frank people want to to some degree say, okay, well, if it would have worked, you wouldn't have had a problem with the play call. And I think my issue, no matter what, is that if we're sitting there, whether it's on TV watching, whether it's in person watching, what have you, if you look at it and you say to yourself, I bet you they run Pena in motion, bet they might fake a handoff to him, bet they might not. They can do that. UCLA's team, its players and its coaches can do that too.
Yeah.
And Penn State, instead of having something unique or creative to do there, instead fell back to something that is predictable for itself, predictable for the defense, and had predictable results because of that.
Yeah, for sure. So I just thought we didn't get to this on the Tuesday show, and I wanted to talk about these key situations. I don't think we got to it on the Tuesday show. That was a blur. It was a great show, but it was a blur, so I don't really remember. Right. But this was something I knew I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm glad we had this conversation because for a day where the offense was relatively good, there were still these really bad pain points that pointed to the issues that still exist on the offensive side of the ball. So, there we go. More of that coming up this weekend with Northwestern, I think.
Yeah. So let's get into the Wildcats. This is the Wednesday, October 8th edition of BWI Live. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle. After we talk briefly about the Wildcats, we'll go back to them here in a bit, and then we'll get into some stock up, stock down. But T. Frank, I just want to get your first impressions of the Wildcats. 3-2, like I mentioned a moment ago, coming off of back-to-back wins. They beat the same UCLA team that just beat Penn State. Another thing I can't believe I'm saying. And then also just blew out a non-conference opponent, Louisiana Monroe, 42-7. My initial read on them, not as bad as you might expect Northwestern to be. I don't see a playmaker like Nico Amialava on the field for Northwestern on offense. And in theory, Penn State should be able to do almost whatever it wants against the defense of Northwestern. Problem, of course, is putting those what looks to be possible on film and on paper into reality on game day.
Yeah, there's been very little confidence in the translation there, right? So I think that Northwestern, and James Franklin mentioned this when he was prompted for the review of Northwestern, is there's some similarities to Iowa on defense, but there's some similarities in general of this is a sound football team. They're good at football. They're not good at athleting, but they're good at football. So their offensive line is competent. Their defensive line is physical. They don't have good pass rush. They have big physical linebackers who can stop the run, smart, don't make a lot of mistakes, but aren't generally superstar athletes. The secondary has some good football players, and they play a type of defense that when you do it correctly is very hard to play against. And so there is a level of challenge here that Penn State has seen before and defeated regularly that will make the game ugly if it's played on Northwestern's terms. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Is like I think this is going to be an ugly game because Northwestern is going to be able to play with that sort of like stick in the mud, the stick between the spokes of the bicycle to make this all just kind of grind to a halt. But there's not anybody that you would say that really threatens on either side of the ball for Penn State in a way that could change the game for the Nittany Lions. But good luck. Good luck being like confident in that this year.
I mean, if you're looking for a silver lining, I guess, is that I did my prediction that we'll post over at blueillustrated.com on Thursday, and I wrote that it was going to be ugly. And I have been so wrong in every game prediction this season that if you're looking for something to hang your hat on, maybe we'll all be wrong about this game being ugly, because so far we've been wrong about maybe not the non-conference scores so much, but certainly, but even those were, I think most of us were off by quite a bit in almost every non-conference game. Believe we all picked Oregon to win. Obviously, we thought Penn State would win handily against UCLA. So it has not been a fantastic few weeks for the prediction. So if you want to hang your hat on anything, I'm willing to bet our whole team at blueillustrated.com is going to write about this possibly being a pretty ugly win for Penn State, and that means maybe it won't be. Of course,
you know what?
That could also mean it's a loss.
You've convinced me. I can create an argument for you. I can draw up the game plan where Penn State scores 40 in this game. And it has a lot to do with Northwestern's defensive structure and like getting the post open over the middle against the too high defense for Devontae Ross to have a big day. Like that could be a Devontae Ross has a big day in this game. We'll see. Like that's the path forward for Penn State, I think, if they want to have a really strong game on Saturday. But I want to get into the stock up, stock down, because I think this is a really fascinating look at the team.
Whoops. I think we have a thing here. We do. There we go. All right. Stock up, stock down. It is time to make our picks for who is thriving and who is not during this 2-game Penn State losing streak. I was reading the chat thing. I do need to correct that. Yeah, we all picked Penn State to beat Oregon. I think I said it the other way around. But yeah. At any rate, the predictions have not been great. But let's get into stock up, stock down for Penn State amid this 2-game losing streak. T. Frank, I'll let you lead off. You want to do stock up or stock down first? Make your call, and then we'll dive into the first name to know.
Let's do stock up quickly and then get to the stock down part. I'm going to go with Alonzo Ford because I feel like I have a responsibility if I started creating a narrative here to make sure that the narrative stays within the bowling lanes, like the bumper plates of where it actually should be. Penn State's defensive tackles are not too small. They have elements where they lose on double teams because some of them are not big enough to hold up on double teams consistently. So it's kind of like a qualifier on a qualifier. But Alonzo Ford is. Alonzo Ford and I think Xavier Gilliam are two guys that have played well within this system and are doing a good job. So as much as we're going to get to this of how this is affecting the defense and causing the leaking yardage, it's not on Alonzo Ford. It's not on Xavier Gilliam. And even to a certain degree, it's not on Zane Durant. It's so I just the guy I wanted to highlight here to start off is Alonzo Ford is a very good run defender. He has exceeded my expectations for a guy who got hurt late in the year and has come back and played good football. Not maybe as the difference-making athlete he was last year. I think that's still slow to come back, but he is holding gaps, doing his job within this defense. So I wanted to highlight him within this conversation of Penn State's defensive tackles aren't big enough because he absolutely is. And it's just that the attrition of playing 160 plays in 2 games is getting and wearing these guys down.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. I think a lot of people have been looking at that defensive line so far this year, and we're going to get into it more stock down wise. And One more. So we'll talk about that more in a second. My first stock up is going to be Penn State running back Katron Allen. I feel like despite not getting the number of touches and carries that fans want him to have, and that maybe sounds like Penn State would like him to have, I struggle with that whole thing too. Like James Franklin saying on Monday that was a conversation with the coaching staff this week, Katron's touches and snaps so far. And why is that a conversation now? I don't really understand that. I do think that when you think about the fact that Penn State did block a punt, did not have a possession until there were 7 minutes left in the first quarter, like there's some game flow things that limited his total number of snaps without question. The Luke Reynolds fumble, another one. But at the same time, you also choose how many times you put him out onto the field. And so I think that's where the struggle comes in that conversation. It's the number of series he and Nick Singleton continue to split from a ratio standpoint. But he's been good when on the field, so he's a stock up guy for me.
Yeah, and it's the situation. Keep coming back to it. It's the situational thing. It's 8 carries to 11, so 3 carries difference. 2 of those came in a 2-minute situation where Nick Singleton's on the field as the receiving back. Just like that can't keep happening. Yes, you're down, but your best players have to be on the field. So I agree with you, like in terms of like I actually have a little bit more sympathy for how these things keep happening, but they can't. Like that's the point, is they can't keep happening. You need to override maybe some of your predetermined substitution rules to just say, Katron's in the game. The end. Audavian Collins. Again, I think in the grand scheme of guys on defense where there's some struggles, I do want to point out that Penn State's not playing terribly on defense. Like it is not one individual player, one individual thing, or all of them completely collapsing. This is still a really good team in terms of the talent, and Audavian Collins has been holding up his end of the bargain. When teams do throw down the field, he has been a menace in man coverage, and he's been very effective at breaking up passes and not getting pass interference. He has been as advertised so far this year, even in these 2 games where Penn State has struggled.
Yeah. My next stock up, and I will throw up Logan's super chat. I appreciate the donation. He says, appreciate you guys as always. What's the number one thing you guys want to see this weekend? So my stock up next is Venga Iwani. I feel like he has played pretty well so far this year. But what do I want to see this week? I want to see him and the other 4 offensive linemen or whoever's out on the field for Penn State, whether they use 7, whether they use 5. I want to see those guys dominate. Drew Shelton said yesterday that he feels like a lot of the issues, T. Frank, are tied to 4 guys doing their job and 1 guy not doing it. I feel like Venga's done his job more often than not. That's why he's a stock up guy for me. Yeah. It frustrates me to be talking about this idea of a team that claims it has 7 starters along the offensive line, and 5 of them have played a absolute ton of football. And we're talking about 4 guys doing their jobs and 1 not on October 8th and into week 7 of the season. It's just a little mind numbing to me.
Yeah, it's positive semantics, again, I think, from the conversation of they believe that they have 6 guys or 7 guys that can play and need to be more consistent in the way that they do it. And so they're going to manifest that through coaching and telling those players they can do it so they'll believe it. And then those players have to go out and do it, and they are not. Ironically, he was my other guy because Drew Shelton, I think, struggled in this. If we're looking at the 2-game sample size, I'm sorry, I keep starting sentences in the middle. If we look at the 2-game sample size that we're talking about for the stock up, stock down, Drew Shelton was actually very good against UCLA, but was not good against Oregon. Venga Ioane is the guy that was pretty consistent through both of those games. And against UCLA, Penn State pivoted to, okay, the right side is having some issues from the center over. So they just lined up and played gap duo football and ran behind the tight ends and the left side against UCLA. And it was largely effective. And Venga Ioane, Drew Shelton were part of that. But the guy in this 2-game sample size for me is also Venga. So they're trying to, in these situations, as much as they can, and you really can't in run blocking, eliminate certain variables that aren't going well. And like we're down 17 points at halftime. There's not a whole lot of time to run the football and just concussively be successful on the ground. They had to throw the ball on a day where they're completing a ton of passes. So there is some nuance and context to the running conversation, but Venga as a pass blocker and as a run blocker has been the best offensive lineman this year, clearly and without a doubt.
Right. I have a hard time disagreeing there. Last one for me. I give a half point to Drew Aller. Like I said, it's the start of the show. If you're just tuning in, I had a really hard time coming up with stock up options here. I thought he was good, or at least good enough against UCLA. but he was not put in enough winning positions to help put this team over the top, mostly because the defense and the special teams let the offense down, which is a rare thing to say coming out of a Penn State loss, but it did. So I'm going to give him a half point. It's a half-hearted inclusion.
Careful,
but I
Greg.
feel like,
You're going to be called a suck-up. You're going to be called a Drew Eller apologist and a suck-up if you acknowledge that the quarterback isn't responsible 100% for winning and losing.
Yes. Oh, well, I
offensive.
think that for as much as we have piled on him, and I say we as a collective, whether it's reporters or fans, whatever, so I feel like it needs to be pointed out that he was not bad on Saturday. And Penn State, again, let the offense down on defense and special teams, which, again, the defense in particular, they've kind of earned one. You know, it was ugly. It was awful. There's no way of sugarcoating it. But, you know, at the same time, I feel like almost every other loss, if not every loss in the James Franklin era, has mostly come down to the offense not getting the job done. So worth pointing out that was not the case this time around. All right, let's flip to the easier side of this conversation. Stock up, stock down is what we're doing right now. Stock down, T. Frank, you and I have a number of players on this list. I'm going to choose where to start because I want to get this. It kind of goes hand in hand. So one of your stock downs is the transfer receivers. One of the other super chat donations we have here is from Corey Newsom, who says, T. Frank asked Coach if he's thought about playing other receivers. Sometimes guys are bad practice players and great game day players. Receivers, stock down for you, T. Frank. That's the transfers. Yeah. We talked about Kobe Howard earlier in the show. What's the plan here? What's the solution, if there is one?
So, again, it's not across the board because they did throw for 200 passing yards in a game where they just barely had the ball for, like, the first half. They had 3 opportunities in the first half. But critical third down where your number one receiver needs to reach out and catch the ball. He tries to body catch it, and then a corner is able to get in and put their hand in there and kind of deflect the ball away. It's little things like that. And then another time, I don't know if I'm just noticing it now, but this year, for some reason, Penn State's receivers are getting bullied off the field. I'm not hyperbole here. Devontae Ross, Kyron Hudson have been pushed to the sideline out of play multiple times this year. There was a couple of plays this past weekend where Drew Aller's looking around and like Drew Aller's okay. He's playing okay. He's scrambling. He's not. If his receivers aren't eligible receivers, then they have no point on the play, and now you're playing 10 on 11. And they are not, like, there are plays, again, where I'm looking at Drew, looking at the primary read, and it's a shallow cross from one of these transfer receivers, and he's slow off the ball, doesn't get open, and then guys on the backside of the play, in a tempo situation, maybe they're gassed. They're not, like, you're not seeing a whole lot of, I'm going to run this route with my full speed. Right. And they're just not getting open. This was the fear of this particular group. We talked about last year's group and how they had a higher upside because they were more athletic, more explosive, but this group was better at playing football. They could get consistent separation, and if one wasn't open, another should be. But we're in a situation where that's not happening either. And so, again, this is why I'm saying, like, I don't like at this point. If you make some mental mistakes, but you get wide the hell open, and the quarterback has a target that might break a tackle, these are the things we don't know. And so it's fair to ask, is that possible within this offense? And like on a day where they were even productive, I thought that they have just not been what they need to be as the engine of the offense surrounding Aller in the passing game.
How many plays in any given game on offense is Penn State playing with a number less than 11 versus 11?
It's at least
if we're saying the offensive line is 4 or 5 on the plays that don't work, and if we're saying that Drew Aller sometimes as wide receiver in a wildcat situation, and if we're saying that the receivers are sometimes in a position where it makes it 10 versus 11, like I think it's a fair question. Like how many times is it 9 versus 11 or 10 versus 11 for this Penn State offense right now?
That's why it looks hard all the time. That's why it looks so hard. Yeah, that's absolutely a fair question.
All right. Well, we're just all over the place today. I think that's the way it's supposed to be on a day like this, T. Frank, isn't it? I mean, it's just one of those weeks where the
is it me or is it Greg? for everybody out there because Greg has fully frozen at this point. Greg, are you back?
think
How many
it
tabs
could
do you
be
have
that.
open?
None actually. I think that's part of the problem.
Oh,
Let's see if are we back now? Are we good?
I got you.
Okay, cool. All right, let's maybe it was frozen. That's actually a tremendous way to describe things with this Penn State community right now.
Yeah.
All right. What my first stock down, Dom DeLuca. Not going to pile on him. Obviously, he was put in a spot that he was asked to do things he is not able to do against a quarterback like Nico Amilava. So I'm not going to pile on him. Let me move on to the offense.
Give me a couple because you've got like a bunch more than I do.
Oh, well, I'm going to whittle them down. I just put them all down there so I could decide in the moment.
Okay, gotcha.
Luke Reynolds is one for me. He had a drop, and he's had a couple drops over the last couple of weeks. Had a fumble. State is trying to make him a part of this offense, and to his credit, he does get open. He has just not most of the opportunities he's had the last 2 weeks when he's been open. So he's a stock down for me. Again, I think it's great that in an offense that is, like we're talking about here, kind of endlessly struggling to get guys open, he has found himself open. It's just sometimes the ball goes through his hands. Was that throw at the on 3rd and 2 or 2nd and 2 or whatever down and distance it was, like on that final penultimate Penn State drive? Was it a little high? Yes. Was it catchable? Has to be a touchdown. 9 times out of 100, in my opinion, has to be a touchdown. Was not.
Yeah.
Fumble to start the second half. And the Oregon game was a bit up and down too. So stock down guy for me there. Penn State tight ends. We're going to hear from Ty Howe on Thursday, T. Frank. They are not playing the way that I think most of us thought they would. And look, I think that there was some obvious expectations that this group was not going to even collectively do what Tyler Warren did. But, one of the things I want to do during the bye week is I want to go through every press conference from March through August. And all the guys that James Franklin and or his coaches said weren't being talked about enough what those guys are doing. Because Khalil Dinkins was someone who was not talked about enough, according to people within that program. And so far, he has not even made enough of an impact over the last couple of weeks to even be mentioned as a stock up or stock down guy here. Luke Reynolds is someone who has seen the ball come his way, unlike Dinkins. And T. Frank, it just has not gone all that well over the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Chaz Coleman. And it's not like I'm not happy about that. That's not like somebody who's playing relatively well to then put them in this situation. But the question was like, okay, the first 3 games, he's playing like a superstar. What happens when he plays against Big Ten teams and the pass rush has dried up? His productivity has dried up against Big Ten opponents. So I don't want to say it's all fool's gold. I don't say it was a false positive. He has been out there. He is still athletic. He's still gotten a couple of pressures, but not being able to get the quarterback to the ground, losing contain, some of these freshman things are still part of what he's done so far, and that lack of strength to be able to play through blocks and make the play, not just disrupt the play from the offensive perspective, is there. And so Penn State needed a speed rusher. They needed a closer, somebody who could just win in the most effective and brutally effective way. And it was probably too much to ask the true freshman to do it, and it was. It was too much to ask the true freshman to do it, especially against Oregon and in some of these biggest games. Now, to be fair, this is a part of the coming up on our conversation about what's going on with the defense. Nobody's holding the ball against this team to give them a lot of these opportunities to throw, to get to the quarterback. But quick wins are quick wins, and Chaz Coleman, the number of them have dried up.
Yeah, and so I think that I'm going to stay on the defensive line here and look at Zane Durant over the last 2 weeks and really this season so far. He's a guy that we all agreed, or at least I think we all agreed, that he was a guy who did most of his work in ways that didn't show up on the stat sheet. But Penn State was hoping that went to, he was able to make some more impactful plays stat sheet wise compared to making impacts in ways that made others appear on the stat sheet. You just don't hear his name a lot over the last 2 weeks, or really this whole season, T. Frank. I don't know what you make of his season to date, but I struggled to really pick him out from really game 1 through now. Yeah,
I mean, I wrote about it earlier in the year, and I was told that I was stupid for saying those things. And, he is not playing poorly, but he is not making an impact. And so that's for one of your best players. That is what you would want, your impact player to make impact plays. And it is both fit, scheme, and frankly, his talent being singular in the way it's applied to football. And in this, I'm kind of saying the same thing twice, but it is a limitation there that is showing up now that he's being asked to do different things. So, I'm not super surprised that Zane Durant hasn't been thriving in this defense.
Your last stock down is one I will echo as well. It's King Mack, the Penn State safety, who took over the job from A.J. Belgrave-Shorter a little ways into the 2025 season. I'm assuming you put him here and I'm just kind of riffing off the fly here because I don't really feel like talking about some of the other names I had on my list, and I liked your inclusion of him. But I'm assuming you were just expecting some more from him after he's moved into this bigger role that you haven't seen.
Run defense and missed tackles, mostly missed tackles. And it's probably unfair because there's just this one obvious, painful example of Penn State could have gotten off the field on their very first drive on 3rd and 1. They funnel the ball to him. And this is, Jim Knowles said this during the bye week when talked about King Mack. He said he's a little bit undersized. That gets him in trouble in certain situations in coverage and tackling. And he got stiff-armed. He got big brothered into the ground, and that's a problem. When he's your strong safety, and if he's coming down and trying to make plays, he's been really good. And I don't want to, this isn't a massive stock down, but it is a revealing thing of these are the weaknesses or these are some of the problems. And just generally in run defense, he has made some plays, but the leaked yardage comes from guys either breaking tackles or falling forward through tackles, and that's been a part of it with King Mack.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on and on in this segment of today's BWI Live. The stock down list, as we've talked about throughout the show, pretty long, pretty extensive. You can make a case for a lot of other guys to also be on this list. So let us know who you think is a stock down or stock up player in the comments, whether you're listening live or on review. We can also discuss them with you over at bluewhiteillustrated.com inside the Lions Den forum, where it's $1 for the first week and then billed annually from there. So be sure to check us out over at bluewhiteillustrated.com. And now we're moving on to checking out some best bets. T. Frank, I have some good news for you, buddy. Missouri, Alabama is indeed this Saturday. So we are back with our best bet segment, and I am going to start with that contest. Bo Prabula and the Missouri Tigers are taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Missouri is +3 at BetMGM. This segment of Best Bets brought to you by BetMGM. I look at it like this, T. Frank. You're giving me Bo Prabula and 3 points in a game that looks pretty evenly matched. I'm going to back the Tigers here to get the job done. But I think the most interesting thing to every Penn State, anyone connected to this program, again, fan, reporter, so on and so forth, is that you just want to see. I think Penn State fans are more interested to see what Bo Prabula does in this Missouri-Alabama game than they are anything Penn State actual football does on the field against Northwestern on Saturday. But I see this as a coin flip, so give me the points every time, Missouri +3.
All right. And I know you're going to the next big game in the Big Ten, which we didn't see coming initially, but Indiana has sustained their abilities. They have sustained who they are. And so the game of the week, Oregon and Indiana, if it's in the Big Ten anyway. So what are you doing here with Oregon getting 7.5 points?
Yeah, so speaking of preseason predictions that maybe went a bit haywire, much like all of our Penn State predictions in the preseason did, a lot of people were looking for the next Indiana in 2025 after the Hoosiers stormed their way through the 2024 season. And guess what?
It's
the next Indiana is Indiana. Yeah, it's shocking, I know. But the Hoosiers are going on the road to play Oregon this week. The Ducks are a 7.5-point favorite. And I feel a little bit iffy on this one because I feel like I'm biased based on the fact that I watched Oregon in person. I have not seen Indiana in person.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time believing coming off a bye that Oregon offense is going to be held in check. I know the Indiana defense is pretty good, but I think Oregon wins this game by 10 points plus. I think if it was at Indiana, maybe a different outcome. This line looks low to me. Now, it was hammered. It opened at 10.5 and it dropped down to 7.5. So there was some significant money that came in on the Hoosiers so far this week. Not usually the side you want to be on the opposite of, but I just think it's got too low. So give me the Ducks to win by more than 7.5. I would take it up to the alternate line of 9.5. I think, or 10. I think the Ducks win this game going away, and it will bring more questions about where Indiana can go and could be in this season. But so far, you're right; they have sustained what they did last year so far this year.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what you want to do with Penn State Northwestern. Betting on Penn State at any point, predicting anything this team has done, has been an absolute fool's errand, as we've discussed with our predictions so far this year, of just picking the winning and the losing and how it's going to happen. So how's it going to happen this weekend? What are you looking at in this game?
Yeah, Penn State minus 21.5 at BetMGM. Opened at 22.5 on Sunday afternoon, dropped to as low as 20.5, and now is back over the 3-touchdown threshold at BetMGM. I think we'll see that number get bought back and forth throughout the rest of the week. Total is 47.5 points. A lot of money on the over so far. I do this begrudgingly, but I'm going to side with the under. I just think we talked about it being an ugly game earlier in the show. It just feels like Penn State wins I don't know. I'm going to have to actually change my prediction because I picked too many points for this game to go under. But you know what? I'm going to change it live on the air. I'm not changing my prediction. I'm going to change it live on the air. I'm going to go with the over 47.5. I have it Penn State 38, Northwestern 14. I don't trust the Penn State defense. I don't trust the Northwestern offense. I don't trust the Penn State offense, and I don't trust the Northwestern defense. So give me chaos. Give me points. I will take it to go over the 47.5 points, and we'll see how this whole thing plays out. It's become, to the point you just made, it's become almost like I sent Ryan Snyder, who you all, of course, know, and we'll hear from on Thursday's BWI Live recruiting show and game preview. Sent Ryan my pick this morning, and the way I started it was basically it's become, well, you just used a phrase actually, but a fool's errand. But even beyond that, it's almost become useless to try and predict these Penn State games because whatever you think is going to happen on film, on paper, all the research you want, blah, 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 hasn't worked out that way so far. So please do not give apathy, Penn State fans. Stay with us. Be mad. Be happy. I don't care. Just don't be indifferent and stop joining us here on BWI Live and at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I beg you. We're working hard for you. Come enjoy us, whether it's here, whether it's at the site at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, or whether it is wherever else you might consume us. All right, D. Frank, those are my best bets. Let's do some what's the word I'm looking for here? Let's just hit the outro.
See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer now for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are not withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossings Casino and Hotel.
All right, that is our BetMGM Best Bet segment and disclaimer of the week. Penn State moving on, of course, like we said, to face Northwestern at 3:30 p.m. on FS1. Connor Onion, Mark Helfrich will be back on the call for the game, T. Frank. And if Penn State's going to win this game, it is going to have to be better on defense. Again, I don't see anyone on the Northwestern sideline or attack that is capable of doing what Nico Amilava does with his feet. But T. Frank, I said you did a long, in-depth review of this Penn State defense, and what your take. I mean, I'm going to sum it up at 1,000 feet, and then you can dive into the 10-foot view. But long story short, man, you hit the nail on the head. It was a fantastic read. I read it twice so far, once last night and once this morning, and just too many little things wrong for a Penn State defense that started off on the absolute wrong foot with a big thing wrong. That was no Tony Rojas, and then no solutions for what it was giving up by missing him throughout the game.
Yeah, so what started as a tactical decision against Oregon that I was in support of because it was the right game plan turned into a problem at UCLA because they don't have the same athletes to challenge or scare Penn State. And now that we've seen it happen against FIU, we've seen it against these last two teams, there is absolutely a blueprint of how to attack the Penn State defense, and it starts with the structure and the placement of players. Football on the defensive side of the ball is tactical deployment of resources because you can't take away everything. James Franklin is always happy to say, or really likes to talk about, taking what the defense gives you because they have to give you something. In this particular defense, it's unusual in the thing that generally, I would say, Penn State is giving teams is the run game. There is a certain amount of goading and baiting of, sure, run the ball, I dare you, in this defense because of the way they deploy the safeties and the linebackers in this defense. And I went into just the alignment of where these players are and how they line up on the field over in the article at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I don't want to go through everything because talking about it is the second worst way as opposed to writing about it. And the best way is to show you on video, which, we don't have the video here, the licensing to show you all the things that we need to. So the point is, Penn State leaves the box, meaning between the tackles, more susceptible to run plays than any other team, or generally most teams. And it is actually a trap within this defense because they will try to build a wall from the interior out. So Zane Durant, Xavier Gilliam, Alonzo Ford, in this defense, what you normally have is you'll have a linebacker that's responsible for one A gap, meaning one side of the center, and you'll have a defensive tackle who's responsible for the other. And that's kind of how it goes. Either or across the line for an even down front, meaning 4 defensive linemen. Usually every other gap is responsible for a defensive lineman and then for a linebacker, generally. Like I'm over gross generalization here. What Penn State does is even if they align in a certain look, they'll put both of their defensive tackles in the A gap. Because if you're going to leave a soft middle, you need to build a wall that they can't run through. And so that's why Zane Durant is seeing more more double teams. Why you're seeing, Ty Blanding struggling to get on the field because even if you're starting in the B gap and you end up in the A gap, there's more of a likelihood that you're going to see double teams from the offense, especially if you're asking them to run at you because you only have 5 or 6 players in the box. And Penn State in this situation is not performing poorly. Like they're not actually performing poorly. They're giving up 4.3 yards per carry. The average in the Big Ten is 4.39. It is not an elite number. It is not where they have been historically. But this is not an atrocious run defense. The problem is that, as we talked about, there are these leaks that are starting to happen because Zane Durant is on the field for too many snaps, and the human ATP cycle, I don't understand all those things. I just know that you're better at the beginning of the game than you are at the end. You get tired. Okay, so as the game wears on, they struggle in these situations to stop the run, and it leads to this leaked yardage after contact. So Penn State right now, especially after this last game, has given up 507 yards after contact. That is the 4th most in the Big Ten. So on the whole, they are absolutely giving up too many yards after contact. But because they've seen so many run plays, they've allowed fewer yards per carry than you would expect. 2.7 yards after the contact per carry is actually pretty low in the Big Ten. It's the 6th lowest. So the averages aren't bad, but it's this death by 1,000 cuts that we talked about. I mean, Oregon named their promo video after the win a death by 1,000 cuts because that's the game plan. You're going to take those runs, and if they're given to you, offensive coordinators can't help themselves. They're going to run into an advantageous formation. The problem is, Greg, when we talk about the passing game, Penn State's defending a thing that teams aren't even trying. You are muted, buddy.
Of course I am. Why not? With one more.
Well, I mean, I was going on a 10-minute monologue, so that's
on this Wednesday edition of BWI Live. But yeah, I think that is the most the biggest problem, and you kind of hit on it here, and you did so more in depth during the show, is that we all knew coming into the season the best part of the Penn State defense was going to be the secondary, and opposing teams have just said, okay, that might be your strength. We'll just beat your front 7, and we're not even going to worry about those guys. They can worry about us 5, 6, 7, 8 yards down the field. Yeah, the numbers in your story are alarming, and you mentioned the yards after contact. We've all seen the missed tackles that I'm sure if we went back into the year-over-year comparison are up through 5 games compared to previous seasons.
And that's more of an acute problem. I do want to say that I would say is more of an acute problem to a couple of players. I think Amari Campbell struggled early in the season with missed tackles, and then in this past game, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. In the Oregon game, they didn't miss tackles. It was just the falling forward that allowed them to stay on schedule.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just where we are at this point with this Penn State team. There's not much else to say, I think, about the defense, T. Frank. We all saw what we saw. Like I said, you can go read the full breakdown from T. Frank at BlueWhaleIllustrated.com, where it's $1 for the first week, but got to be better. And whether James Franklin asked about the linebacker situation on Monday, didn't make it sound like they were moving any players to that position from, say, safety. So
I don't know who there would be.
Right.
That's the problem. I don't think that there's a solution somewhere. Like, there's not some magic bullet that's like, oh, well, this is the solution. Like, they have safeties that are the size of safeties. Their linebackers used to be safeties in a lot of situations. So they've already made those moves.
Right. At this point, if you're going to try something else, it's about putting somebody out there you don't fully trust and just hoping instinct and everything else falls into place and seeing what happens. All right, let's wrap up with a look at Northwestern. And the question everyone's asking starting on Monday in the Lions Den Forum and continuing through today, Wednesday, October 8th, and throughout the week, can Northwestern replicate the plan that UCLA used to beat up Penn State on offense on Saturday? T. Frank, Preston Stone is not a running threat necessarily and not a dual threat quarterback, but I don't know, man. Something tells me he might try and be at least early in this game on Saturday.
The Louisiana Monroe game, he had a great quarterback draw right up the middle where he got 20 yards or so. He's not unathletic, but you're right. He's not Dante Moore. He's not Nico Iamaleava or any facsimile of that. But he's a generally mobile quarterback. Here's the thing about this game plan, because it's about short passing, RPOs, screens, and throwing the ball under 10 yards.
Right.
Northwestern already replicated this game plan against Oregon. It's why they were staying in the game, and everyone's like, "Hey, look at Oregon. They look beatable. They look vulnerable. Northwestern hung with them. They've already replicated this. The difference is Oregon still scored points in the first half, and they were always trailing. Northwestern was trailing in that game. So, yes, Northwestern can replicate this. Their offensive line, while not, you don't look at this and go, okay, there's a first-round draft pick out there. They're generally competent blockers. I think you can beat them, and their guards, I think, are beatable. Their tackles are beatable, but if you put them in the right situations and circumstances, but if they get to just operate their game plan, yes, this is a team that can nickel and dime you on the field and extend drives. So nothing changes in that regard other than this is an opportunity where Penn State clearly has more talent along the defensive line. And if they can get some negative plays, they can shed some blocks up front and get into the backfield. They do have the opportunity to put this team behind the sticks, off schedule, and just get some momentum. One of these teams, offense or defense for Penn State, has to generate some genuine momentum for the program. Somebody has to plant a flag and say, okay, what happened is now over. I am taking control of this, while also playing within the scheme and not trying to be a hero. Like, just doing their job to the highest level possible and creating a massive problem for the other team and making it easier on everybody else. Penn State needs somebody on both sides of the ball to take the game from the other team. They did not have that at UCLA. They need to have that against Northwestern.
So for me, the picks to do so, Katron Allen, obvious one.
Yeah.
Defensively, I don't know. I mean, Amari Campbell seems like a logical choice, but to me, it needs to be somebody on that defensive line.
Yep.
Somebody on that defensive line needs to start wrecking. And I realize that part of it is they're doing what they're asked to do in this Jim Knowles defense, but somebody needs to, and again, offenses have so many ways now to take pass rushers out of play. But to me, when you talk about taking control, I think on offense, it's obviously Katron Allen with finding a way to get Devontae Ross the ball, perhaps at a close second. Yeah. And then on defense, it's one of the defensive linemen. You can pick Nittany, you can pick Coleman, you can pick Zariah Fisher, you can pick Zane Durant. I don't forward. It doesn't matter to me who. Yeah. One of those guys up front needs to be a game wrecker in this contest and put some things on tape that will make opponents, as you talked about earlier, fear this front four a little bit, because right now they don't.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. Like, one of the numbers is the fourth down conversions and the fourth down attempts. It is shocking.
It was shocking.
Like Greg said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was mind-blowing to me to see where, teams just, you hit the nail on the head, man. They don't respect that Penn State pass rush, and quite frankly, without Tony Rojas, UCLA at least didn't really respect the Penn State front seven and was able to beat it in a way that mirrors that. All right, final thoughts, Steve Frank, as we wrap up.
Yeah, Follow us at blueillustrated.com. Shot all the bullets in the chamber on today's show. This felt like a good show. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. And we'll have James Franklin press conference so you can be mad about what he says tonight. So we'll just rinse and repeat.
Yes, rinse and repeat as best we can. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle. It's been another edition of BWI Live. As Steve Frank noted, we'll have complete practice coverage at BlueIllustrated.com this evening. The guys will be back on Thursday with the recruiting show and the game preview. Speaking of recruiting, Ryan Snyder just posted while we were on the air a good breakdown of what Penn State commits are feeling as Penn State tries to get out of this rut that it's in, 2-game losing streak. So you want to check that out, hear more about it tomorrow on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel and at bluewhiteillustrated.com. For Thomas Frank Carr, I'm Greg Pickle. We'll talk to you next time on BWI Live.